Hello, I'm Ethan, and today we're reopening the Fear Collective to explore the scares and subtext of 2020's Caveat, now streaming on Shudder. If you're new to the channel, I'm here to discuss horror films from generations old and new, so if you want to learn more about horror and explore films that maybe you've never heard of and talk about them on a deeper level, then subscribe and leave me a comment letting me know what movie you want to hear me talk about, and I'm all ears. This is going to be a spoiler-free review, but I am going to discuss some themes and basic plot points, as well as show clips from the trailer. So if you want to go into this blind like I did, this is a very rewarding watch, and I totally recommend it. Check out the movie and then come on back. But for right now, let's get into it. Caveat is director Damien McCarthy's debut film and stars Jonathan French and Lila Sykes. This is one of the first Irish horror films that I can remember watching, and honestly, I'm fucking stoked on it. It was rad. I couldn't be more excited to talk about it today, and I definitely gotta watch more Irish horror. This movie gave me moody, it gave me somber, it gave me twisted. Caveat is all the things that make a really solid horror film for me. I think the film's greatest strength is in its simplicity. This is a film that largely exists around just two characters, and yet the world still feels super rich and consistently engaging. The story is beautifully simplistic. Our protagonist, Isaac, is recruited to house sit a decrepit home and the young woman who currently resides there. Now, she seems to be struggling with some sort of psychological issues following the death of her father in the same house. What could go wrong? And this idea of being recruited to essentially stay the night in a creepy place does remind me a lot of 2019's The Vigil, but where I feel The Vigil sort of lost its balance, Caveat is solidly its own film throughout. The whole film has a sort of Ring vibe to it aesthetically. It's like an Evanescence music video, but in the best way. The imagery, sound design, set pieces, it all culminates to transport you to a demented dreamscape. And that's because while the events in the film do exist in what I believe to be modern day, they feel very removed from the reality of our world. The cinematography, the set design, it all gives it a sort of stage play vibe that reinforces the oddballness of the film and helps build the sense of unease. It makes me think of films like Incident in a Ghostland and Killing of a Sacred Deer, where audiences do well to suspend their disbelief, to sort of engage with the off-kilter, uncanny valley nature of the story. And for those who aren't familiar with the Uncanny Valley, it's essentially an idea that applies to humanoid robotics that are so similar aesthetically to real-life humans that it's sort of unnerving. The sense of unease that you feel when you're looking at something you believe to be authentic, but you just have this general sense that things are sort of off, it's like that. So if I had to nitpick the film, I could understand the criticism that the scare sequences feel somewhat far apart, and under a different director, I think this film could be edited to be a tighter, more edge-of-your-seat style horror film. That said, these are my favorite type of scares. They really encourage you to use your imagination and sort of fill in the blanks, because not everything is shown, and that's the style of horror that just works for me. If you feel inclined to straight up jump scares though, there's plenty of those in this film and some of them are very effective. The main theme of the film that I picked up on was guilt. There's this whole chained up dog metaphor that is admittedly very heavy-handed, but works if you're willing to buy into the augmented reality of this world. Don't apply real-world logic to this narrative because I think you'll be sort of missing what the director had envisioned. One thing that stood out to me was a figurine on the young girl's dresser. It was of the three wise monkeys, the hear no evil, see no evil, speak no evil, which in Japanese culture essentially represents the idea of turning a blind eye. So I was thinking about how that could be applied to this narrative, and I think it could be correlated to how a character responds to their guilt. And within that context, this film then serves as a cautionary tale. I'm going to rate Caveat a 7 out of 10. I love this movie. It felt singular, fresh, and inspired, and those are exactly the type of horror films that we need more of. Less of The Conjuring 3, please. If you like The Vigil, Hereditary, or Relic, I would recommend this for you. And as I said, it's streaming right now on Shudder, which is a platform specifically for horror films. If you don't have it, it's like $5.99 a month, and I would totally recommend it. So if you want to continue the conversation with me, you can give me a follow at The Fear Collective on Instagram, and also check out my new podcast called Planet Spook, where my best friends and I discuss horror films, hauntings, and all the mystical, creepy things in between. And until next time, guys, the collective is now closed.